Hello, Eden. First of all, I open up the project settings and prepare the project for the file type. So the input color space. In this case, the input color space, I chose sGamut, sLog2. There's a couple of others, I guess. There's sLog and sLog3, Gamut 3. So I liked the starting point of the sGamut sLog2, but I sent you the project so you can just go in there and change it if you like. I put my timeline color space to Rec 709, Gamma 2.4, as well as the output color space, and limit the output gamma to the color space. So this basically means that once you create the file, you can't really go backwards with the one that you're creating with your rendered output. I think if you went with output color, I think if you went with well 2020 is bigger than Rec 709, and I think DCI is also bigger gamut than Rec 709. So those two, but in this case I just chose the same one as the output color space. And once that's done, you just drag in your file. And here you can see I've got a grade applied already. So the first step I do is I come in. I've created these here, so I'll walk you through and then I'll show you how I did it. First thing I did was evaluate what we're looking at. So if I go Alt D and disable all of it, well, you can see that just bringing that file into Rec 709 gives you that sort of same thing that you've been looking at with your Facebook post. It's kind of washed out. The gray, the blacks aren't black; they're gray. The skin tones are whitish and pale. But as you mentioned, overall, it's a well-exposed image. So you have lots to work with here, you know. When I look here at my scopes, I generally use the waveform the most because it gives me a lot of information, and I choose one of the others when I'm trying to pinpoint a certain issue that I want to deal with. And when I look at this, as I say, it's a well-exposed image. And you can see up here right away, there's some information that's been chopped off. So some highlights up in the rigging maybe has been overexposed, but it's extremely minimal. And actually, we could look for a way to recover some of that. So I'll do that as well. So let's close this and call it back up. So Alt D to turn it all back in. And so this is my end grade that I did for you. Just based on what you were saying, you wanted a sort of orange teal, sort of a grungy, cool look to it. And this is what I tried for. And I'll show you how I did it. So starting with this image, what we have here, it's a well-balanced image, lots to work with. And so one of the first things I see that most people want, you have to ask yourself, what do you want out of this image? And so clearly we want some nice vibrant colors. We want the blacks to look black, not gray. And I think we want to also sort of highlight this person, you know, away from the others, and sort of try and create a gentle focus that helps to push her a little bit more into the foreground, because there is some stuff back here that's interfering with us looking at her. So that's the assumption I went on. So what I'm going to do here is, you can see my end grade. I'm just going to go like this. Delete, delete, and reset. So let's start from scratch. as I say, the first thing I wanted to do was give me some color to work with. Let's because it's a well-balanced image, let's start with giving me some color to work with. So what I do there is I come into my RGB mixer, and I push the reds, the greens, and the blues to the top. With preserve luminance, with this checked, that means that the colors become saturated without pushing the brightness of the picture, the overall brightness of the picture. So you can see if I turn this off, what happens is by doing what I did, you can see everything goes way over, and you can see all of the stuff here gets pushed way off and gets killed. So in this case, again, because it's a nicely balanced image, preserving luminance is something that you want to do. Now, if there was an area of the picture that you wanted to boost across a certain color, the red, the blue, or the green, you could perhaps turn this off. Let's say, perhaps you could turn this off and push them up individually. But as I say, for me, I like to keep this on at this point. I just maximize my 3 colors, and it gives me a nicely saturated image to start working with. The next thing I do from there is, again, this is basically a very sort of simple approach. In this case, the next thing I do is I do my curves. And I come down here in my curve, and unless you know this, you turn on editable splines. And what we do here is we can take this little handle and start pulling it down. And you can see what happens is you get this really nice pull in the darks. You haven't changed the overall balance, but you've really created some contrast that pulls you into those blacks, and so those blacks are really starting to push into what we're expecting to see. The other thing is when we come up here in the highlights, remember I mentioned that we had some highlights just peeking up into the. Well, if you pull those down, you can see if you watch the screen, there is some information we can pull down until we get. You see here, there's a slight pulling there, so. You can pull those down just until they start just like that. So now you can see what we've done is we've pulled those highlights, any of those highlights, and pulled them away from blowing out. There wasn't much there, but there was a little bit. And now we can start on this end, we can start to decide where we want to pull those highs along. And so I'm liking what I see here. I'm going to pause now and then just go on to number 2. So those are the first 2, getting your color and then getting my curves, and I can see that my darks are just pushing that first line, and I've maximized my colors, my highlights.